The piercing wail of sirens filled the air as Officer Daniels turned to shoo away the persistent puppy, its tiny body trembling with urgency. Moments earlier, a 30-foot embankment had crumbled, trapping Finn's mother in her car, pinned and unconscious. The puppy barked desperately, its sharp yelps drowned out by the chaos, but it refused to leave the scene, its instincts screaming for help. Just as the officer was about to push it aside, the little dog lunged forward, tugging at his pant leg, leading him to the wreckage. It took only seconds for the officer to realize the puppy was the only one who knew where Finn's mother was. "My name is Finn. I owe my mother's life to a dog no one believed." As I stood there, my heart racing, the image of my mother's worried face flashed in my mind. I could still feel the warmth of her embrace from earlier that day, the way she had knelt down to my level, brushing my hair out of my eyes while reassuring me that everything would be okay. But as I glanced back toward the shed, the dread pooled in my stomach. My father was trapped, and no one seemed to understand the urgency of the situation. Buddy barked again, a desperate and insistent sound that broke through my thoughts. It was as if he knew that every second mattered, that every bark carried the weight of our family's hopes. The officer hesitated for a moment, looking down at Buddy, whose tiny frame trembled with effort as he continued to pull at the officer's pant leg. I felt a surge of hope when the cop finally knelt down, his face softening slightly as he studied Buddy's frantic behavior. "All right, little Buddy, show me what you've got," he said, his voice low and calm. That was all the encouragement Buddy needed. He dashed toward the collapsed shed, turning back every few moments to check if the officer was following. I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude toward this little dog who seemed to have more courage than all the adults around me. As we reached the site of the accident, the reality of the situation struck me harder than a cold wave crashing against the shore. The shed, once a place of laughter and summer picnics, now lay crumpled and dark, its wooden frame twisted and splintered. I could hardly breathe as I imagined my father trapped beneath the heavy boards, his cries muffled and lost. Buddy, however, seemed unshaken by the sight. He darted around the debris, his small nose twitching as he searched for a way in. I wished desperately that I could follow him, but fear held me rooted to the spot. "Stay back, kid," the officer instructed, but I ignored him. My feet moved of their own accord, driven by a primal need to find my father. I peered into the shadows, calling out, "Dad, can you hear me?" My voice was a whisper, trembling with uncertainty. The silence that answered was deafening. Buddy, however, didn't stop. He continued to bark, louder and more insistent, as if he understood that his mission was to awaken the world around us. I felt a flicker of hope ignite in my chest, pushing back against the darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. After what felt like an eternity, more officers arrived, their presence bustling with activity and urgency. They were equipped with tools to clear the debris, and my stomach churned at the sight. I wanted to scream at them to hurry, to save my father before it was too late. I could see the worry etched on my mother's face as she clutched her phone, likely trying to reach someone, anyone who could help. I wanted to run to her, to comfort her, but my feet felt stuck, anchored by a wave of uncertainty and fear. "Get him out of there," I shouted, my voice rising in a desperate plea. I didn't even notice the tears streaming down my cheeks until Buddy nudged against my leg, looking up at me with his big brown eyes, as if to say everything would be all right. In that moment, I realized how much this little puppy had come to mean to me. He had become my anchor amid the chaos, a steadfast friend who refused to give up hope even when I struggled to hold on to mine. The officers began to work quickly, lifting boards and moving debris. I held my breath, praying silently that they would find my father soon. As I watched their frantic efforts, I couldn't help but think about my dad. He had always been the one to tell me stories of bravery and adventure, of overcoming obstacles that seemed impossible. Now I felt a strange sense of determination rising within me, as if I were channeling his strength. I wanted to believe that he would be okay, that we would be together again soon. "Finn!" I heard my mother's voice crack, pulling my gaze away from the chaos. She was calling for me, desperation lacing her words. I turned to see her standing just outside the perimeter, her eyes wide with worry. "Stay back, sweetheart. Let the officers do their job." I nodded, though the weight of the moment felt heavy on my heart. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be fine, but the fear of what was happening kept me paralyzed. Then, just as I thought my heart couldn't take anymore, a loud clatter echoed from the wreckage. I felt my pulse quicken as the officers shouted to one another, their voices a mix of urgency and relief. "We're getting close," one of them called out, and I took a step forward, my breath hitching in my throat. I clutched Buddy tightly, feeling his small frame tremble against my hands. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours, until, finally, I heard it, a weak voice calling out from beneath the rubble. "Finn, help me." My father's voice was barely audible, but it sent a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could barely process the fear and relief that swirled within me. "Dad," I shouted, my voice breaking. Buddy barked again, as if urging the officers onward. I watched as they worked feverishly, shoving aside the last few pieces of wood, and I felt like I might burst from the sheer intensity of the moment. Hope, once a flickering flame, ignited into a blazing fire within me. Suddenly, my father's hand emerged, reaching upward through the darkness. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Tears streamed down my face as I watched the officers pull him free, their faces a mix of exhaustion and triumph. I rushed forward, propelled by instinct and love, forgetting everything else in that moment. "Dad!" I cried out again, my heart swelling with joy. The sight of him, dirty and battered but alive, filled me with an overwhelming sense of relief that I never thought I could feel again. Buddy yipped excitedly, bouncing around my father's legs, and in that instant, I knew that our lives had irrevocably changed. In the face of despair, we had all found resilience. I reached my arms around my father, who pulled me close, and I felt the warmth of our family begin to mend. Stitch by stitch. The bond between us, strengthened by the trials we had faced, would carry us forward into whatever came next. As the days passed, the sun seemed to shine a little brighter, though the shadows of that day lingered in the corners of our minds. With each sunrise, I felt the weight of the world slowly lifting, as if the warmth of the sun was somehow stitching our lives back together. Buddy, always by my side, wore a proud expression as he wagged his tail, a little warrior who had saved my father. I would often find myself stroking his soft fur, the comforting rhythm of his heartbeat reminding me of the bond we shared. He had been my steadfast companion through the chaos, and I knew I would never take his loyalty for granted again. Mom was doing her best to hold everything together, but I could see the fatigue etched into her face. There were moments when she'd sit quietly in the living room, staring at the framed photographs that lined the walls, lost in thought. I wanted to reach out and remind her that we were a team, but words sometimes felt inadequate. Instead, I'd place Buddy's head on her lap and she'd smile, if only for a moment, as she absent-mindedly scratched behind his ears. Those small gestures were our way of coping. They became our silent language, a message of love and support that didn't need to be spoken aloud. One afternoon, while we were sitting in the backyard, I noticed Mom flipping through a photo album. She paused at a picture of my father, his goofy grin lighting up the page. The sight tugged at my heart, and I could feel a lump forming in my throat. "He looks happy," I whispered, breaking the silence that had settled between us like a comfortable blanket. Mom glanced over at me, and for a moment, I could see the flicker of something in her eyes, perhaps nostalgia or sorrow. "He is happy," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He just gets lost sometimes, you know?" I nodded, not fully understanding, but sensing the weight of her words. There was a truth buried there, a realization that my father's absence affected us all. I thought about how, before the accident, I had always wished for more time with him, more moments where we could share laughter and adventures. Now, I longed for that connection more than ever. In the following days, I made it my mission to bridge the gap between my parents. I would often find myself daydreaming about our family spending time together again, perhaps going on a camping trip or having a picnic at the park. I envisioned the three of us sitting on a blanket, Buddy happily scavenging for crumbs while laughter filled the air. Fueled by that hope, I approached Mom with a plan. "Can we invite Dad over for dinner?" I asked one evening, my heart racing at the thought of seeing him again. Mom looked surprised, her brows furrowing slightly as she considered my request. "Finn, do you really think that's a good idea?" Her voice carried a hint of worry. I could sense her hesitation, but I knew this was important. "I think we need him," I insisted, hoping to convey the depth of my feelings. "I want us to be a family again, even if it's just for one night." After a moment that felt like an eternity, Mom sighed and nodded. "Okay, let's give it a try." The days leading up to the dinner felt both exciting and nerve-wracking. I helped Mom prepare, rearranging the dining room table and picking fresh flowers from the garden to create a centerpiece. Buddy, sensing the buzz of activity, was particularly energetic, darting around the house with a newfound purpose. Each wag of his tail seemed to echo my own anticipation. As the clock approached the designated hour, I paced nervously, glancing out the window every few moments, hoping to catch sight of my father's familiar silhouette. When he finally arrived, I couldn't help but feel a rush of mixed emotions. He looked different, more haggard perhaps, with shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. But when he saw me, his face lit up in a way that momentarily chased away all the clouds hovering over our situation. "Finn!" he exclaimed, kneeling down to pull me into a tight embrace. It felt good to be in his arms again, even if the moment was bittersweet. Dinner was a delicate affair, with the three of us navigating our conversations carefully, like stepping over fragile glass. Buddy, eager for attention, bounded between us, bringing moments of levity as he tried to steal scraps from the table. Laughter eventually broke through the tension, and I could see glimpses of the family I had missed so much. My heart swelled as we reminisced about silly moments, shared stories, and the quirks that made our family unique. It felt like a fragile truce, a step towards healing. As the evening drew to a close, I felt a warmth in my chest that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I watched as my parents exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. It was a hint of understanding, of a bridge being built, however slowly. When my father left that night, I felt a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. I clung to that hope like a lifeline, believing that we were on the path towards something better. In the weeks that followed, we continued to take small steps, including more family dinners and outings, with Buddy always by our side. Every shared moment seemed to weave us closer together, creating a fabric of connection that felt stronger than before. I realized that even through struggle, love could endure. I knew that while healing would take time, our bond had a resilience that could weather any storm. I could see the possibility of a brighter future ahead, one that would be filled with laughter, love, and the unbreakable bond we had forged amid the chaos. If you're enjoying this journey with us, consider subscribing to stay updated on our story as we navigate love, loyalty, and the path to healing together. As the days passed after my father's rescue, the atmosphere at home began to shift. The air felt thicker, almost charged with an unspoken tension. Buddy, ever the spirited puppy, remained my constant companion, bringing a sense of normalcy to a life that had been upended. His playful antics and boundless energy were like rays of sunshine breaking through a clouded sky. I often found myself lost in thought, wondering about my dad's recovery and how our family would heal from this experience. Sarah had been trying her best to keep everything together. I could see the fatigue etched on her face, the worry lines deepening as she juggled work and caring for my father. Some evenings, when I would sit quietly with Buddy on the porch, I could hear her muffled conversations with Mike. They were often filled with frustration and regret,
and I felt a pang of sadness each time I realized how far apart they had grown. My heart ached for them both, yet I was too young to know how to bridge that distance. One afternoon, while walking Buddy, I spotted a group of kids playing soccer in the park. Their laughter filled the air, and I felt a pang of longing. I wanted to join them, to feel the carefree joy of childhood, but the weight of everything held me back. I glanced down at Buddy, who was tugging eagerly at his leash, as if sensing my inner turmoil. His eyes sparkled with excitement, and I couldn't resist the urge to let him lead me to the field. As we approached, I hesitated. Would they accept me? Would they understand the heaviness in my heart? Just then, Buddy broke free and dashed onto the field, drawing the attention of the players. I chased after him, calling his name, feeling a mix of embarrassment and amusement. The kids stopped playing and stared at the little whirlwind that had interrupted their game. But instead of turning away, they laughed and welcomed us with open arms. After a while, I found myself kicking the ball with them, my worries momentarily forgotten. Buddy raced around, barking joyously and weaving in and out of the players' legs. In that brief moment, laughter filled the air, and I felt a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in weeks. I was reminded that life continued, even amid the chaos. I realized that these simple moments, filled with joy and connection, were just as important as healing from our struggles. When I got home later that day, my cheeks still flushed from running and laughing, I found Sarah sitting at the dining table, staring at a stack of unopened mail. She looked up, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of my smile. "You look happy, Finn," she said, her voice softening. "What did you do today?" I told her all about the soccer game, the kids, and Buddy's antics. I could see the tension in her shoulders ease, even if just a little. She smiled, genuinely, and I felt a flicker of hope. If I could find moments of happiness, maybe she could too. As we ate dinner together, I made a point to share my joy with Mike as well. Days turned into weeks, and I noticed my father slowly regaining his strength. He had started physical therapy, and I would sit beside him, encouraging him as he worked to regain the use of his legs. In those moments, he would share stories from his childhood, tales of adventures that made us both laugh. I cherished those stories, relishing the bond we were building, even as we navigated the aftermath of the accident. Buddy had a way of bringing us together. I often caught my dad watching Buddy play, a smile creeping across his face. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across our backyard, I suggested a game of fetch. It seemed like a simple idea, but it transformed the atmosphere. I could see the spark in my father's eyes as he joined in, tossing the ball for Buddy to chase. As we played, I felt a sense of unity, a moment of shared joy that had been missing for so long. It was in those simple interactions that I began to feel the fractures of our family healing. I realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures, but also about these small moments of connection that tied us together. However, the challenges weren't completely behind us. There were still awkward silences at times, and the shadows of guilt lingered in my father's eyes. He often looked at me as if he wanted to say something but held back. One evening, after we had settled down for the night, I mustered the courage to approach him. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused, his gaze shifting to the window. "I'm trying, Finn. I wish things were different." I could feel the weight of his words. "Me too," I admitted, "but we can still make good memories, right?" He turned to me, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "You're right, it's just going to take time." It was a small breakthrough, but I sensed that we were on a path toward reconciliation. I had learned that healing was not a straight line, but rather a winding road filled with ups and downs, and I was ready to walk that road alongside my father, with Buddy by our side. In those moments, I felt something profound beginning to shift within our family, a tentative but growing understanding that we could move forward together, despite the scars of the past. As the days turned into weeks, our lives began to change in small but significant ways. My father, once a ghost in my memories, started to emerge from the shadows of his guilt. We shared moments filled with awkward silences, but every laugh we found together felt like a tiny victory. Buddy, with his boundless energy and relentless enthusiasm, often broke the ice. He would leap between us, demanding attention, and in those moments I could see my father's face soften, a flicker of hope replacing his previous despair. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in the backyard with Buddy sprawled beside me, basking in the sun. I glanced at the old shed, its battered frame still haunting my thoughts. Despite the repairs, I couldn't shake off the memory of that day. I turned to Buddy, who seemed to sense my unease. He nuzzled my hand with his warm nose, pulling me back to the present. There was something therapeutic about having him there, a reminder of resilience. As I scratched behind his ears, I thought about how his unyielding spirit had brought my family together. It was a Saturday when my mother announced that she had signed us up for a community event in the park. At first, I hesitated, still fearful of crowded places after the incident. But the idea of spending time together as a family intrigued me, especially with Buddy tagging along. My father agreed, his enthusiasm bubbling to the surface. "Let's make some new memories," he said, a tentative smile creeping onto his face. The day of the event arrived with bright sunshine and a gentle breeze. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as we arrived at the park, but Buddy bounded out of the car, his joy infectious. My mother grabbed my hand, and together we watched as my father attempted to keep up with Buddy's playful antics. As they raced through the grass, I couldn't help but smile. The laughter that filled the air was a balm to my heart, easing the weight of the past. Soon, we found ourselves at a booth where children were painting colorful pottery. I watched as my father and I picked up brushes, the vibrant colors splattering across our pieces. Buddy lay at our feet, occasionally looking up to make sure we were okay. I felt a sense of normalcy wash over me, a feeling I had almost forgotten. It was comforting to know that we could still find joy, even in the aftermath of chaos. As the day progressed, my father shared stories from his youth. Tales of mischief and adventure that had me laughing until my sides hurt. It felt surreal to witness this side of him, the father I had always wanted but often felt was lost. I could see how much he cherished these moments, and it was as if he were slowly reclaiming the time he had lost with me. I began to understand that his absence hadn't stemmed from a lack of love, but rather from his own struggles, and this realization allowed my heart to open a little wider. Eventually, the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden hue over the park. We gathered our pottery, still damp but filled with our laughter and love. As we made our way back to the car, Buddy trotted ahead, his tail wagging furiously, as if he knew that today had been special. In that moment, it struck me how much he had helped us heal, how his instinctive loyalty had brought us back to each other. Later that night, as I lay in bed with Buddy curled up beside me, I realized that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be difficult days, moments of doubt, and times when the past threatened to pull us apart. But I also knew that we had a foundation to build upon, a bond that had grown stronger through adversity. My father's presence no longer felt like a distant memory, but rather a reality I could embrace. In the following weeks, we continued to explore activities as a family. My mother suggested we start a weekend tradition, something simple like movie nights or baking together. It seemed like a small step, but it was monumental in its significance. We turned our living room into a makeshift theater one Friday, popcorn flying everywhere as we laughed at the antics of animated characters. Buddy, eager to join the fun, darted between us, trying to catch the popcorn that occasionally slipped from our fingers. Through every shared experience, I began to see my parents in a new light. My mother, despite the exhaustion that often weighed her down, was full of love and tenacity. She pushed through her worries to give me the best life she could, and my father, who had once seemed so lost, was fighting his own battles to be present for me. With Buddy, our trusty companion, we were finding joy in the little things, and those moments stitched our family back together. One evening, as I was brushing Buddy's fur, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. He had been my anchor through the chaos,
his unwavering loyalty teaching me lessons I wouldn't have grasped otherwise. I looked into his expressive eyes and felt a connection that transcended words. In many ways, he was the glue that held us together, reminding us of the importance of love and support in the face of hardship. As I watched Buddy tumble around the living room, chasing after a rogue sock, laughter erupted from my parents. It filled the air, weaving through the remnants of our past struggles like a healing balm. In those moments, I felt a warmth in my heart, an understanding that healing was possible. And no matter the challenges we faced, together we could rise above. As the days passed, the initial shock of my father's accident began to fade, replaced by a slow, steady rhythm of healing. Buddy remained by my side, his playful antics a constant reminder that joy could still exist, even in the wake of despair. Every morning, I would wake up to find him curled up at the foot of my bed, his little tail wagging as if to say, "Today is a new day." I often imagined he understood more than just the need for play. He seemed to sense my unspoken worries and fears. Mom tried her best to keep our lives as normal as possible, filling our home with the sense of hearty meals and the sounds of familiar music. But I could see the shadows under her eyes, the way her smile didn't quite reach them. She was tired, caught between managing the household and caring for Dad, who was still recuperating in the hospital. Some days, it felt as if we were walking on a tightrope, balancing between hope and uncertainty. Each time I visited my father, I caught glimpses of his struggle, the way he flinched with each movement, the pain evident on his face. It was hard to reconcile the man I had once idolized with the frail figure lying in that hospital bed. One rainy afternoon, I decided to sit down with my sketches, something I had neglected since the accident. As I drew, I poured my emotions onto the page, the pencil stroke becoming a release for everything I felt. Images of my father smiling, me standing proudly beside him, emerged alongside pictures of Buddy bounding through the grass, his fur glistening in the sun. It was a way to connect with happier memories while navigating the stormy seas of the present. Suddenly, the sound of paw pads against the hardwood floor drew my attention. Buddy had decided to make a valiant attempt to steal my pencil, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I chuckled, briefly forgetting the weight of my worries. As I chased after him, I realized how much I needed these moments of laughter, how they stitched together the jagged pieces of my heart. In those brief interludes, I could see a glimmer of hope. Buddy was my constant, my little warrior, reminding me that love could thrive even in the darkest of times. Later that week, Mom and I went to see Dad again, bringing along one of my sketches as a surprise. I could feel the excitement bubbling in my chest as we entered the hospital room, a place that had become so familiar yet still felt so foreign. My heart raced at the thought of seeing Dad's reaction. When I unveiled the drawing, his eyes widened, and for a fleeting moment, the pain seemed to lift from his features. "Wow, Finn, this is incredible," he said, his voice hoarse but filled with pride. I could hardly contain my joy at his praise, the bond between us feeling more tangible than ever. As he studied the picture, I noticed a softness in his gaze, a connection that had been strained for too long. "You know," he started, pausing as if the weight of his words needed careful consideration, "I've been thinking a lot about how I haven't been there for you. I'm so sorry for all the times I've let you down." His sincerity struck me like a bolt of lightning. I had always felt his absence, but hearing him acknowledge it made everything feel different. "Dad, it's okay," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "You're here now, and we're going to get through this together." In that moment, something shifted between us. It was as if the air had cleared, leaving behind the heavy fog of regret. I could see his eyes glistening with emotion, and I knew that he was grappling with his own guilt and fears. We were both learning to navigate this complicated landscape together, bound by our shared love and the unbreakable ties of family. When we left the hospital that day, Buddy seemed to sense our uplifted spirits.
He pranced around us, barking joyfully, as if celebrating our small victory. I felt lighter.
Buoyed by the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild our family stronger than before. Together, we started to form a new routine. Buddy became a source of comfort for Mom and me, often curling up beside us as we watched movies or played games. It was as if he were a glue, piecing together the fragments of our lives. One evening, as we all sat on the couch, laughter erupted over a silly movie. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw Mom's laughter ring true, her eyes sparkling with genuine happiness. I glanced at Buddy, who was sprawled out on my lap, snoring softly, and I realized how much he had brought us together. He was no longer just a puppy. He was a beacon of light in our home, guiding us toward healing. I started to believe that even though the road ahead would still be tough, we had each other to lean on. Dad would eventually come home, and I could already envision us playing catch in the yard, Buddy racing between us. I felt a sense of gratitude swell within me, a deep appreciation for the moments we had, the love that still lingered despite the scars we carried. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on the journey we had embarked upon. I hoped that anyone else who had faced hardship could find comfort and connection in their struggles too. Sharing our stories can create a tapestry of understanding, reminding us that we are never alone in our battles. In that spirit, I want to invite anyone reading this to share their own experiences. Together, we can cultivate a community of strength and resilience where love truly knows no bounds. As days passed, the air in our home shifted, infused with an uneasy mixture of hope and lingering despair. Buddy seemed to sense it too. He had taken on an almost guardian-like role, watching over me while I tried to navigate the emotional turmoil swirling around us. His bright eyes held a wisdom that belied his size, and every wag of his tail felt like a reassurance. A promise that everything would eventually be all right. I found comfort in his presence, even as the weight of my father's accident loomed heavily over our family. Sarah worked tirelessly to keep our lives running smoothly. She juggled the demands of her job with an ever-growing list of household chores, her smile often cracking under the strain. I wished I could ease her burden, but I was still just a kid, grappling with my own feelings of confusion and sadness. I sometimes caught her staring out the window, lost in thought, her hands twisting the fabric of her apron as if it could somehow knit our family back together again. Each time I saw that look, I felt a pang in my chest. It was the physical embodiment of all the unspoken words between us. Mike's absence was a shadow that hung over us, even as he fought to stay present in our lives through phone calls and occasional visits. His voice would crack when he spoke of the accident, revealing a vulnerability that made me ache for the father I remembered before everything changed. I longed to see him more often, to embrace him and share my worries and fears. But every time he would leave, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could he be so far away when we needed him most? I wanted to believe that the distance was temporary, that he was working on things that would bring him back to us fully. There were moments when we would share laughter over the phone, and I would feel a flicker of hope that everything could be repaired. Those moments were quickly followed by the stark reality of our situation. Each time I hung up, I was left with the echo of his voice that didn't quite fill the emptiness. Yet Buddy remained steadfast, ever the cheerful distraction during those heavy moments. One afternoon, I decided to take Buddy for a walk to the park. I needed a break from the swirling thoughts, a chance to breathe outside of our cramped living space. As I pulled on his leash, he bounced with an energy that made me smile. It was the small joys like these that kept me grounded. The park was a patchwork of colors as autumn painted the leaves with hues of gold and crimson. Children played nearby, their laughter ringing out like music, a stark contrast to the silence that often enveloped our home. I watched Buddy chase after fallen leaves, his tiny body a blur of motion as he darted back and forth, barking at the swirling gusts of wind. It was pure joy, a reminder of what it felt like to be carefree and unburdened.
I couldn't help but laugh as he tumbled into a pile of leaves, sending them flying into the air. Those brief moments of laughter pulled me out of my own head, making me feel alive again. As we sat on a bench, I took a deep breath, watching the world around me. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow across the park. My thoughts drifted to Mike. I wondered what he was doing at that moment. If he was thinking of us as much as we were thinking of him. I wished I could show him how much we missed him and how desperately I wanted things to change. I closed my eyes, imagining a world where our family could be whole again, where we could share meals, laughter, and stories without the heavy weight of the past pressing down on us. Suddenly, I felt a nudge at my side, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Buddy, looking up at me with his big, trusting eyes. In that moment, I realized he had become more than just a pet. He was my confidant, my friend, and my emotional anchor. I reached down to scratch behind his ears, feeling the warmth of his fur against my fingers. "You know, Buddy, I think we can get through this," I whispered, almost surprised by my own conviction. "If we stick together, we can find a way to help Mom and Dad." From that day forward, I made a promise to myself that I would help mend our family. With Buddy by my side, I took on the responsibility of being a source of strength for Sarah. I started doing chores around the house, tidying up and cooking simple meals. I wanted to lighten her load, to show her that I understood how hard she was trying. Each small act became a stepping stone, creating a new rhythm in our home that felt hopeful instead of heavy. Sarah noticed my efforts, her tired eyes lighting up with gratitude. "Finn," she said one evening as we shared a dinner of pasta and sauce I had whipped up, "thank you for helping me out. It means a lot." Her smile felt like a warm hug, and I realized how important it was to express our feelings, even in the simplest of ways. As the weeks turned into months, our family began to shift, slowly reshaping our narrative around the tragic event. Mike visited more often, and we started to talk openly about the accident, not just the fear and sadness it brought, but also the lessons we were learning. I discovered that Mike carried his own guilt, feelings of failure for not being there when we needed him. It became clear to me that we were all struggling, each in our own way. With Buddy at the center of our newfound communication, we talked about loyalty, love, and the importance of being there for each other. Buddy had somehow bridged the gap between us, teaching us what it meant to stand strong together. I could see the spark returning to Sarah's eyes, and even Mike's laughter started to echo through our home once again. In the midst of recovery, we slowly began to find joy again. We laughed as Buddy chased after his own tail, played fetch in the backyard, and even shared movie nights filled with popcorn and silly comedies. Each moment was a reminder that even through the darkest times, there could be light, especially when we leaned on each other and embraced the love that surrounded us. I learned that healing wasn't linear. It ebbed and flowed like the seasons. But with Buddy by my side and my family beginning to mend, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, we were discovering the beauty in resilience, proving that even in the face of pain, love could triumph. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing we would do it together.